Yay! Okay.
Hey, are we here?
Hello and welcome to the Transformational Speakers Podcast. I'm your host, Erin Loman-Jack, and today we have an amazing woman. Her name is Kricket Harrison, and she is a speaking coach. She's done some productivity. She's got a lot of amazing things. We met online, so this is our first time meeting, which is awesome. I always love that it can be impromptu and just go right to town. So let me just tell you a little bit more about Kricket. Kricket is a performance and productivity expert working with businesses to grow their bottom line faster through speaking and presentations. She's the author of Focus on the Finish Line, 5 Steps to Follow Through and Finally Make Money. Yay about making money. As certified master speaker, Kricket is known for a dynamic and interactive presentations. She delivers engaging workshops that are both informative and entertaining. Kricket recently served as a lead coach for Speak, a professional speaking and business development network where she trained over 150 speakers a year. She resides in Atlanta with her husband of 25 years, 3 children, 2 dogs, and her mom, which I love. That's awesome. So
Hey,
thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. And hey, we're live. Thanks for doing that too.
I know this is the first time, so I'm loving that.
Added bonus.
So tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are today.
You know, my journey is a funny one. It started very organically, I guess is the common word used. I started out in the coaching world, working with adults with learning challenges and teaching them how to work the way they work best, how to do their business, because many of them were entrepreneurs, the way they thought and processed information, teaching them that they were struggling with one thing because they weren't doing it the way that comes naturally for them. And some of those clients like to speak, and I had done speaking. So I always joke, I anchored the news in 5th grade, right? Thank you, Mrs. Cooper. And I've always been hooked, but I wasn't trained in this concept of professional speaking. I was trained in competitive speaking, right? Extemporaneous speaking, contests, things like that. So I always helped my clients speak. My first speaking client was in 2004, but I never called myself a speaker coach. And I really don't today, but everybody else does. So that's always the interesting thing. Through that, you know, I helped my clients all along that were speaking. They were nervous, or they would start on a topic, and then you guys all have been there. You start down one story, and then you're here, and then you're here, and then you're here, and then you're here, and then everybody's lost, right? So I was like, if you can't focus your ideas and stuff in your business, you're not focused in your talks.
Right.
And I really got into the world of speaking. And in 2012, I had the just incredible experience to work with Suzanne Evans and Larry Wingett, and really, really opened my eyes to this world of professional speaking. And you know, you have that voice inside of you that says, dang, I should have done this earlier. Like I always knew I wanted to do this. I started out as a broadcast major in college, and there was always something I let get in my own way. And so in 2012 to 13, I had that amazing experience and continued after that program finished, continue with my work. And a couple of years later, Larry and Suzanne approached me about being a regional director for their program, and which is Speak. And I served as regional director there the first year. And the second year, they brought me back as the lead coach and trainer. And so I had the incredible experience to work with just some of the most amazing professional speakers out there and learn from the best. And that's kind of what got me to where I am now. I've done so well with speaking in my own business that people now ask me about how to speak.
Right. I mean, that's literally how I became a speaking coach, because I was a business coach and I was out speaking everywhere, and everyone kept saying, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. How do you do this? And how do I see you everywhere? Like, what are you doing to get all these speaking gigs? And I was like, oh, there's a real need. People don't know how to do this. And so I literally just kind of baby toed stepped in by just looking at how did I know how to do this? And then I started hiring the top coaches in the world and learning from them, and really seeing that some of it's natural. Some was learned in different things that I've done in my lifetime, but like then just fine tuning that,
right,
dialing it up.
Right.
So what do you think is some of the top, like if you were to say the top 3 nuggets that speakers really need to know that the most of them don't know?
So it's really interesting, because my introduction to this kind of professional world level of speaking was much like yours, was from the top of the top, right? It really is short of being the president or an astronaut or something. It doesn't get much higher than that in terms of the people speaking around the country and around the world and what they're doing. And so my experience with the people I work with is obviously it's like they might be the grad student, the all-stars, and a lot of people are still kind of the elementary school, junior high school level. And at that level, what I see is a lack of clarity on what they speak about, or a fear about being known for one thing. And the one thing that was instilled in me is you get known as a master of one thing. You know, when I see somebody that says, oh, I can speak on anything, or I speak on this and this and this. Well, it's fine if it's the same subject matter and they're just different audiences. But if you're speaking on, well, I'm going to do this talk for them and I'll create a talk over here and then I'll do this talk for this group, and you're constantly changing who you are just to speak, then I don't think it works. I just don't see the consistency and traction. And one of our dear friends that wrote a book, Lois Kramer, she's always kind of saying the same thing is, you know, event planners don't know what to hire you for. Right. Association directors don't know what to hire you for when you're out here saying, oh, I can speak on that, and I can speak on that, and I can speak on that. Yeah. And so that's probably my top thing. The other thing I would say that I think is the biggest difference is this concept of mastery as it is an art form and a piece of work and a job. It is work. It's not something you just say, oh, I'll wing it. And so many people want to, and I think adrenaline-wise, you can wing the first one and maybe the second one, but after that, you can't. No. And the art of watching a true professional to the point that you don't even know they're doing their craft, that blows me away. And that's my total aspiration.
Yeah. Well, because I think the thing is, like, some people are overly prepared and sound robotic. And so some people are like, well, I don't want to sound robotic and not authentic, but you have to have a streamline. You have to have that story flow. You have to have from point A to point B, because if you don't, your audience doesn't know where you're taking them, and they're going to pull up their phone and start scrolling, right? I mean, this is what we do. So it's important to really know, okay, here are the 3 takeaways. Here are the stories I'm going to put in there, and really crafting that so that you are taking people on a journey, and that there's things that they can actually do. Because sometimes as speakers, I love watching people that just get up there and start talking, and then all of a sudden they're like rambling and they don't know how to come back. And I'm like, where are you going? Come back.
Wait, you were telling a story. What's the end of that story? And what happened here? And
right. Yeah. So, you know, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and then they go on to something else. Like, well, did she live? Did she, like, what happened? Like, get back to it.
You know, and it's funny because from my performance productivity side, that's one of the things I teach people is the brain wants closure. Yeah. The brain wants to know the end of the story. So in a networking event, when you've got 30 seconds, that's intriguing. They're going to come to you. They're going to want more. But as a speaker with an audience, they're just, you know, if you're going to do the story form where it's a story within a story or whatever, you have to make sure you come back and close that hole. Right. And too many times they forget they opened it.
For sure. Because they're like,
there's this gap. Oh yeah, I forgot I didn't tell that story. Yeah.
I love it. I love that. So what is your, I would say, what is your superpower when you're working with, when people come to you with speaking stuff and they need some help in that area? What do you say is your superpower?
So I find that, while I had some amazing training, there were certain things that I just picked up on naturally, that I wasn't really trained on. This is how you do this. I was just able to do it. And one of the things I'm able to do in the moment really well is small little tweaks that change things. Yesterday, I went to a meeting and I was kind of the guest expert and did listen to 3 people, 10 minutes of their speech that I had never, ever heard before. And each of them walked away with a page and a half of very specific, change these 3 words to these 3 words. And when I said it out loud, the whole room went, oh, and it's just those little things of meaning and intent. And then the other piece is kind of something you just hit on, is those transitions. Yeah. Right. I remember saying, well, how did you get from here to here? Like, we need a transition step. So it's flow, but it's really taking, when we're doing our own talk, we get in our own way. Like anything we do, we critique ourselves too much and we don't hear, and what we think we're saying is maybe not what we're saying. So to be able to have someone sit there and hear you and just very quickly say, try this, reverse this. And I know it works because I'm watching, and it's not so much about me, but it is good. It's good for me to know, yes, this is working. It's not just me in my head, right? I might think it's good, but I'm one person. Does everybody else think it's good? And in yesterday's group, everybody was like, oh, that's so much better. And oh, that's great. And I don't know how I do it. I really don't. I couldn't tell you. There's no formula I have. There's things that just come to me in the moment. Oftentimes, I pretty much record all my stuff now because oftentimes they'll go, say that again. And I'm like,
I know.
I can't.
Right.
Right. And the other thing is just taking kind of complex ideas and making them simple, making it simple.
Yeah, because if you take people into some complex things, they're going to feel, the thing is, people could feel stupid.
Mm-hmm.
We've all done this. Someone says something in front of the room. We go back to being, in school. I remember sitting in chemistry class and some kid asked a question and the professor went on, and I swear they were both speaking a different language. And I just sat there going, oh my gosh, I must be really stupid because I have no idea what they're talking about right now. And so then I'm in my own head and I'm not even listening to what they're saying. And the next question that I asked was actually that question, but just said differently. And if I would have not checked out, I would have had the answer, right? But this is what we do as humans. Our brain wants to be right. And you're like, oh my gosh, but they're so smart and I'm not. And what's going on? And maybe this is way over my head. Why is this over my head? Then this goes on instead of actually listening to the person in front of the room.
Right.
So break down those complex things into simple ideas, simple tasks, and make it memorable by sharing stories about it. People, this is what we do. We watch movies. We watch videos. We love watching stories unfold, right? So if you don't add that in there, people are like, oh, great. They taught me a point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. That's school. Like if you're a speaker, you got to add in the stories and really take people on a journey so that they're interested in what you're saying.
So I love that you just did the bullet point, because this is a theme that's coming up for me in the past week. I was telling someone, I can write, and I know writing helps you think and process. I just don't necessarily enjoy writing. I'm a mind mapper, right? I don't.
Me too.
But I can write a talk in a heartbeat. And I write my talk, good old fashioned Roman numeral 1 through 5. 1 is introduction, 2 is point A. If you have a 1, if you have A, you have a B, you have a 1, you have a 2. But it doesn't come out that way. And the way I explain it is those are my bones. That's my skeleton. That's my framework. These are the 3 points I teach consistently. And then the stories, everything's a story. What we're doing right now is a story. And the stories are what add the flesh and the bones and bring it to life and make it this thing that's not just a lifeless skeleton. They make it something people want to engage with and be a part of. And so I do have a little bit of that old fashioned, maybe grandmother was an English teacher. So,
Mine too.
Yeah, see? So I can think that way because then I know if I'm going to make a point, I have to have this and this to support it, which provides all the body. Yeah. And I think people forget about like the format or even the format of storytelling. Like there's an art to storytelling. And that's a craft that I don't know that I'll ever say I haven't mastered because I think it's something you work on constantly. I'm always learning from somebody else a different version of their take on storytelling. And I can take the pieces and go, oh, that was great. I love this, and figure out what are the best pieces for me and how does it bring my stuff together. Yeah.
My favorite mentor that taught me about storytelling is Bo Eason. So you get a book and you write out all your stories. And this is something for people. This is a story. This is my very first podcast doing live, right? So this will be also like something I can document in the future. Like one day we'll look back and go, oh yeah, remember you were my first one. So, but writing out stories as you're going along, the more you start writing, and I'm not a writer either. I get stuck there, but you can also just take out your phone and record your talking about it. Mm-hmm. But if you get it out, write out these stories, then kind of look at, okay, what did I learn in that story, right? What was the silver lining? What was the point of that? And then going, okay, when I have a talk where I want to talk about resilience, I'm going to talk about these things, right? So you have a book of stories that at any time you can pull from. And then what I love is what he does is he says, okay, find one of those dark days where you didn't have the answers, right? Find one of those pit days, right? So you write out that. Then he has you write it out from the other person's perspective. So I had written for the first time, I hadn't shared it yet, about my mom having cancer and telling me she had cancer and she had like a year to live when I was 15. Yeah. And so I wrote the story from my perspective. But then when I had to write the story from her perspective, I was in tears. I was barely getting the words out on the paper. I was like, oh my gosh, not only did it help me feel some stuff that I needed to work through, but it gave my story depth. Because it's like watching a movie. You don't watch just a documentary of one person going, here's the day in my life. Look at me. I'm eating my breakfast, right? There's other people in the movie. There's other people in the story. So if you can write it from your perspective, write it from their perspective, it adds that layer of depth that we're all wanting to be entertained and drawn into. But if you don't do that, and I think the third perspective was write it like a fairy tale.
Oh, yeah.
That one was hard for me because this is a morose story. How am I going to make this into a fairy tale? But I did. And I was like, the queen was in the castle and she had to call the princess in, and there was a dragon coming to fight the castle. And it was interesting because then it kind of gave you a different perspective, and it's just kind of fun. It kind of lightens it up because, after doing that, some of that work was hard. And so it kind of lightens it up, but it does give you different perspectives of the story.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things came to mind for me when you said that. For one is it's time consuming. That's why I said it's work. And the people that have mastered this craft, they've put in the work. They've done it. The other thing that you reminded me of when you said write out your stories. So I got this from Joan Rivers. I don't know if you ever saw after her passing, they were showing some of her office, and she has an old-fashioned library card catalog in there. Gorgeous. I think it was wooden. It was really cool. And she or her assistant, most likely all of her assistants at that point in time in her career, took a story. She'd come up with a story, and they write it on a note card, just a little 3x5 or 5x7, probably 3x5 note card. But they would write it out maybe 10 times, and it would go in. This could be a dog story. This could be a family story. And she would put it in any place it could fit. And then when she was looking for stories, she would pull out that grouping of stories and go through, what are my stories that fit the feeling I want, or the end result I want, or the mood I want, or what's the story that would be best before the next story about dogs? Is there, and so it was learning to see a story in all those different ways. The other thing that I really worked on that I just think is really interesting for people, I was explaining this yesterday, is I started out with, this is my talk, right? We get very rigid, and this is my talk. And it's my talk. I don't veer off. I don't go a lot of directions, but these are my stories. And so now it's like, okay, what story supports my talk? And what I was really pushed to do as I was growing as a speaker was to say, here's the story. What point does it support, and reverse it? So now I get the story, and I'm like, what's the point I can make with this? How many different ways can I turn this story for the point I want to make?
I love that. I've never thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That adds that different, again, another perspective that could really help you master your craft, right? I think that, I never learned stage like it wasn't like I didn't do theater. It wasn't something, I wasn't an actress. I think I actually got turned down by many plays when I was like in junior high because my best friend was an actress on stage.
Oh, wow.
But the funny thing is, I think about it, is when you speak, there's some of those things and the components of acting on stage because you're in that moment. But you got to also be authentically you, because what I see sometimes with that is the people like, okay, I've got my speaker. Like you said, I got my talk, right? I'm going to get there. This is my speaker voice. This is my speaker look. This is how I do my speech when I'm in my speaker job. And that doesn't land.
My speaker glasses, my formal look, my librarian. Yeah.
Right. This is how I walk to the stage left. This is how I walk to stage right. But it's funny, right? So it's, blending some of that in where, I've seen like Bo Eason, he gets on there and he's like acting out everything and you're just mesmerized by it. Now, of course, what I'm talking about, I'm not acting out. So it's like interesting to play with. And I'm excited to go deeper into the work with him to find out how do I still be me, but some of those things, how do you kind of act it out in a way, right? So it's really interesting to think about all the things that are in, like, like I said, you wouldn't think theater would be a bit, a thing that I missed out on, but now going, oh man, maybe I should go take up some stage classes. Maybe I should. I've thought about, you're talking about Joan Rivers. I thought about doing learning how to be funny on purpose, like stand-up classes. Cause like I can be funny and joking, but I don't know how to do it on purpose.
Yeah. So, those are a couple of things on my list. We've got somebody here who a lot of people have done his And I kind of think in terms of improv, and then it finally hit me. This is not improv. This is stand up, and it's a little different. I loved what you said about the theater, because and I probably haven't gone public with this too much, but growing up, I remember sitting in my mom's room, and there's probably a story in here that'll come out. And, this was back in the day when mom would iron everything, including dad's boxers and everything else. And she'd be ironing. And I remember sitting on her bed with her, but the little small TV was off to the side. And sometimes it'd be early morning. And I remember watching Good Morning America. And it was back in the day of Joan London. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, I never wanted to be an actress. But I wanted to be a talk show host. I tried drama thinking that would be a good thing. And for me, there was I don't know if it's a positioning, it's definitely lack of self-confidence. There was something in there that I just shut down. But when it came to the speaking part, I was doing really well. So there was something for me about ironically less confident acting out being somebody else doing something, more confident doing my own thing and speaking. I don't know what it is. I'm sure somebody will have some ideas, but and to this day, I'm in that same point. My son is out, graduated UCLA, and is out at acting school. And since he was 4 years old, has wanted to act. He has never wavered. He never wanted to be a fireman, a policeman, any of those things. Wanted to act. And to this day, people say, like, "Oh, well, you do this. Wouldn't you want to, have your own TV show?" And I said, "Oh, maybe a talk show." But no, I've never. That's never been my calling. There's something about just the speaking part for me that's just always been there.
Yeah. And I think when we're talking about practicing and honing different skills to make us better, I think that's the piece that a lot of speakers don't take advantage of. A lot of speakers are like, "Oh, I do good enough." Right? I close some clients. I'm like, well, what is your conversion rates? What are those? You really need to look at it. If you're not converting 30% or more on stage, there's something going wrong. And you might think that you're doing a great job. Like you said, in your head, it's like, it was perfect. It was great. I gave all the content. I did all the stuff. But if the audience doesn't feel that, they're not going to sign up to work with you. They're not going to go deeper with you. You're not connecting with them. So you're not their person. So what, the things are you need to start practicing other things that are going to really hone what you do, because it's really it's multifaceted. It's not just stand up there and do a monologue, right? It really is, how can I master this more? And I think that a lot of people think that it's good enough, but if you're not really deeply connecting and changing people's lives, there's something to look at there.
Yeah, and you pointed to something there that I think is really important for us. And I see this, well, I work with both men and women, but I see this more in women right now, is this concept of, they'll say, well, I think I'm a pretty good speaker. And I usually don't start asking that question. People just show up and they're like, well, what do you think? It's in my head sometimes I'm like, I don't mean, do you really want to know? Because it doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, that's before I've seen them. But I mean, they always ask me, but they never want to know, is what it comes down to.
Right.
And I think it's really hard to, we stand up, we put ourselves out there, and without the right training and support, you don't know if it connects. And so if you put yourself out there and it's not connecting, that's a really hard thing. And the other thing is this whole concept of signature story, signature talk, tell your deepest, darkest pain. And for some people that works, and for some markets it doesn't. And not everything needs to be told. And I think sometimes we have to get really clear. We have to be through our story. If you're telling a story that's really hard, like you said, when you were writing about your mom, you weren't in a place where you could probably tell that much about it yet. So we have to be really clear that we're through our story, but be really clear that we're not telling our story for our sake.
Yes.
It's for the audience. And sometimes I feel like when I see people, it's not, and then they're hurt. And that's where I think you're talking about, there's not a link between the audience and the speaker. There's certainly something in a story that can help the audience. And it's getting really clear on if you're not converting or if you're not getting hired. So not everybody is selling from the stage, but if you're not getting booked, if you say, I think I'm pretty good, and you're not getting booked repeatedly, or you're doing everything for free. And I think in our world right now, we know that, if there's one thing a lot of us could change, is this whole concept of exposure. And as I see it more with women than men, and don't sell yourself short, sell yourself. You're valuable. but do the work to support it. And, so if you're only speaking for free and you're not getting clients, then you don't know. And it's okay. I mean, it's okay to be in that place. You just got to take action of either I'm going to continue down this path and work on it and get the answers, or, it's just not going to be a big part of my business.
Right. Well, and I think the thing is, it's like, if you're not doing that, if you're not getting the results you want, ask for someone's feedback. Like, that's when you really need someone else to look at it. You're right. I never tell a story you haven't healed. Never tell a story you haven't healed. That's so selfish. You're taking people into the depths and then leaving them there. And even if you break down or whatever, or don't, you're still leaving them there. You don't have the answer over here. So you lose all your credibility. And you're telling a story for your purpose, not theirs, right? The reason we tell those stories, we've gone through this hard thing, is because we've gotten through it. We have the answers. We have the solutions. We're helping them get their own solutions to that. And I think that you're right. So many people share their story and they're like, it was a great story, wasn't it? And if you don't know that the audience didn't like it, or you don't have the results, like no one else is booking you, you're not getting sales, you're not getting clients, any of those things, that's a result. There's a feedback right there that you're getting from your audience. So now enlist someone who is a professional and really helping you define that. And what is it? What's off? What's going wrong here? Because I can't see it. We're like here.
One of the things I just want to add, because you hit on such an important point there, is ask for feedback, but ask the right people for feedback. So one of my I can do it here. One of my upcoming kind of blog posts to my video post to my group is this concept of, is your best friend killing your business? Because what I see is, men can walk up to each other and go, man, that stunk, and bump each other, and they're okay with it. I don't know if it's just the way they're raised in sports. I don't know what it is. Women don't do that to women. So what I see is they're like, oh, that was great. That was great. They kind of fake smile, the whole thing. And then they're sitting at the table going, oh my gosh, or they're looking at their phone. And I think it's very rare to have the friend. I know I have a good friend that she'll sit down to me and she'll say, well, you forgot this story. And I'm like, I did. And so make sure we'll always tell you it was great. I want you to really question that. It's not that you're not great, but be really clear on whether they're speaking to you as a friend or a viable business person that might buy from you. Because most times they're not. And your friends are going to love you and support you, and you want that, but they may not be the best people to run stuff by for your talks in your business.
No, I don't think, I always say they're the two people I will receive feedback from, or even ask, or, however, receive it. I always say to receive it. Because somebody might give it to me unsolicited, and I'm like,
all the time.
Thanks for that. Thanks so much. But if the person has to either be my ideal client, and I'm like, ooh, so it is off. Because if you're my ideal client, and you're saying, that story didn't really land with me, or I don't really like that offer, or whatever it is, I will hear that, because that is important. Because if that's just one person, a part of what your ideal clients are, there's something there, right? So it's something to look at. Second would be people who have the results that you want.
Right.
If they haven't done a podcast live before, they don't get to give me feedback on it, right? If they haven't done a speech and converted over 10K, they don't get to give me feedback. If they haven't done these things, they don't get I guess they can give it to me, because some people will like you said, but I don't take it in.
Right.
And so many times we're like wanting to people please, especially women, people please and make everyone happy. That's not going to work. And it's not taking all their feedback and going, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible. I'm so bad. Oh, these people don't like me anymore. All that stuff doesn't serve you and doesn't serve your business.
No, it's like in sports. I mean, the coach's job in sports, and all the different coaches, which is why there's so many of them, they watch films. They watch reels. They evaluate the other things. They watch their team's performance. They evaluate for improvement. It's not to point out you didn't. It's like, wow, I got a laugh here. Let's make this better. Or Larry introduced us to Damian Mason one time, and he was talking about, he sits down and goes through his reels, as he was saying, kind of old time, like everything. Where did I get a laugh? What did I do? And then that becomes more intentional the next time. It might have been off the cuff the first time and it worked. And he's like, wow, let's, how can we play that out? How can we do that? And, but it's I think people think of it in terms of always it being criticizing, but I think it needs to be really looked at in terms of, if I'm not at the level I want to be, what do I need? It doesn't mean you're bad, right? You've gotten to where you are. What do I need to keep doing to the next level? It's like, I kind of joked earlier about, the kindergartner, and depending on what level you are, when you compare yourself to the bigwigs, right? It's like, you don't beat yourself up because you're not here, because you're not at their level. You had skill sets to get you at each previous level. Now you need the next skill set. And if you're not going to evaluate and get feedback, evaluate yourself, but get feedback from people that know what they're talking about, you don't know what the next thing is to work on to improve.
Yeah. And that's where you kind of flatline. If you feel like you're not getting the results you want in your business, in speaking, in any of that, if you're not getting results, there's something not happening to increase what you're doing. Because if you're always moving forward and always growing, I mean, I spend a ton of money every year on personal development, like a ton. Over 50,000, I would say, a year in personal development. And I think a lot of people, like, I have friends that say, oh my gosh, why are you going to this speaker's event? Why are you going to this speaker's event? And I'm like, because there might be something I don't know. And I like to see what other people are doing at my level and higher than me. Like, I want to know what's going on. And the best part is, all the people in the audience, they might not want to hire the person in front of the room. They might be looking for a speaking coach and they don't like that person. So guess what? You're the other option.
Here I am. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I do the same thing, because I think the minute I say I'm done or I know enough is the minute I tank. Right. I think, again, you have to keep growing and keep developing, and the market changes and the people change. I mean, what we're doing now with all technology from years ago, when I wish I would have started, is totally different. But one of the things I also try to do is, I mentioned earlier about, the whole concept of women and getting paid and speaking, is I try to see who are the rock star female keynoters and what are they doing differently to set themselves apart? Why did they make it and the others are still struggling? What's the difference? So because there are so many, Bo's got a fabulous program and a fabulous storytelling background. And if you guys don't know him, look him up, but because he came from such a different space, and there's lots of great people out there. I don't see a ton of females teaching courses like Bo Eason's or some of the other people. And there you go, right here. But to watch some of these women, like I'm going to Jeannie Robertson's event here in Atlanta in September. Some of these women who have stood the test of time and are really phenomenal at what they do. So I try to balance both sides of that. Like, what's the business side, what's being taught, and what's the male perspective? And then I try to get the female perspective as well.
And that's one of the things. So I confronted Bo, and I talked to Roger Love about this, and eventually I want to bring Brendan in this conversation. But at World's Greatest Speaking Training, they're all men on stage.
Right. Yeah.
And they've had a couple women off and on, I've heard, not when I've been there. I mean, they have Shalene comes on sometimes, but she talks about marketing. She's really not talking about speaking. And I know that there was more women that got up on stage and asked for feedback than there were men. And there was more women in the room than men. So we can't look at a man and go, oh, that's how I'm supposed to speak. Right. When I got up there and I did my 3 minutes on stage, I had women coming up to me and saying, I want to grow up to be like you. How do you take grace and power and the just, feminine energy on stage, but also be powerful? Because you could be up there and be like a woman, you could be, oh, hi, and you could be, very feminine, but that doesn't land with everybody, right? And so how do you
can't raise your voice?
How do you, or just be very airy, but how do you take, looking at a man and going, oh, okay, I see what they're doing, I really like that, but how do I do that as a female?
Right.
It's a different ballgame.
Right.
And I think it's important to have more of us doing that.
Yeah, I had a man one time, part of his program was like, you get to walk on my stage. And I was like, really? But, I was there kind of to support him. So I did it. And I'm like, okay. And he's teaching me how to stand. And he's like, no, put your legs further apart and a little further. And I said, no woman would ever stand like this. And he said, I said, no, and I said it to him. I was like, no woman would ever stand with her legs that far apart on stage. It looked like you were riding a horse, basically. It was too much, right? It wasn't the way, but it was awkwardly so I can guarantee you that's not for a female.
No.
Right?
But for a man, that's how they take up their space.
Right.
So I think it's important to have more of us females out there teaching women how to do this. I have corporate execs all the time say, I don't know how to show up where men will hear me. It's in high tech, male dominated. And what I say is, first of all, you got to bring down your tone. Because if you talk up here or you talk really nasal, they're not going to hear you. You have to come down into your chest voice so they can actually hear you and not tune you out. Right. And women are like, but I don't understand. Just trust me, try it and see. And they're like, wow, you're really right. People heard me more. I'm like, because think about it. As kids, we sometimes tune out our moms, and right, because our moms are usually giving all the directions. Tune out our moms. Then they have a girlfriend that they just tune out because they're annoying. Or girls are like, oh my God, how, and they talk all valley, right, in high school or whatever. So
now you're dating yourself here.
Right. Men start to definitely start to tune out women's voices, the tone of a woman's voice.
Right.
So if you come with that woman's tone all the time, they're not going to take you seriously. They probably can't even hear you. Like, it becomes like this thing where they like mute you out. And so you have to meet them where they are, at the same time owning your own confidence and power.
Right. And that again points to helping people understand that when this is said to them, you need, matter of fact, my daughter, so hi, Katie, if you're watching, I've taken her to a couple of networking things with me lately. She's getting ready to graduate college, and I'm trying to kind of, they're really not taught how to network. So I've taken her to an event, and she talked to somebody, and I said to her afterwards, I don't know if you noticed, but your voice went up. Keep your voice where it is. I said, don't lower it, try to be something you're not, but keep your voice where it is versus, hi, and she kind of looked at me. And then the more she heard herself do it, she's like, they don't realize they do it. So it's remembering that, again, this is that piece of feedback or teaching or a skill set in learning. It doesn't mean you're wrong or broken or failing. It's understanding that it's not because your voice is bad. It's because it's like when you listen to somebody on the radio that has a great voice, right? You want your voice to be at that level that be heard and not tuned out. And it's not about you being bad or, oh, my voice is just too high. Yeah, you can learn.
Yeah. And that's what we say. Power feedback is super powerful. And, even watching yourself, it's harder because the reason we hate to listen to our own voice is because it sounds different than it does in our heads, right? So we're like, that's what I really sound like. And we get all weird about it because we think that's not how I really sound. And if you stop doing that, because even the top singers in the world can't stand the sound of their voice, which is like, we're all like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing, but they don't like it either. If you can just listen as if you were listening to someone else, would you listen to it? Is there things that you would like to change? Is there ways that, if you're asking for a promotion, you go, can I have a promotion? You're not going to get a promotion. Give me, can I have a promotion? Different ways, right? So try it out. Listen back to yourself. Figure out what works for you. And I don't say like, no, we're going to talk like this now. And I got to be really deep down here. Like you said, don't be someone you're not.
You need to take steroids.
Play with your voice.
Yeah.
Because there's times where I go really high because I want people to get really excited and be up here and feel that emotion. But then there's times where I go really low. And I want people to be brought in. And you can tell the difference. Just listening to this on a podcast, you're going to be able to tell the difference and go, ooh, I wonder when I do those. And when you do it on purpose, you really become the master.
Yeah, and that was feedback I got back in 2013 was like, you did a really great talk. You had the best use of book and all this, but you needed layers. And it was my smart aleck head with kids went, layers, onions have layers, right? Like, that's where I went. I'm like, okay, really, that's the world I was living in. So I'm like, okay, can you explain? And they were like, you just needed, like, my projection was good, but I needed to have some things a little more exciting and then some things a little more calm without going, I think to your point, without going, exciting doesn't mean this. Exciting means more projection and more out there, but not going into your head, kind of a thing. And so that was really, because I didn't know I did it. In my head, when you're on stage, they tell you to do everything bigger, right? And you don't realize it. So in my head and in what I thought I was hearing, I was doing that. To your point, to go back and listen to it, I understood what they said. I'm like, wow, I thought I did that. And if there's my changes are just like this, as opposed to like this, there's a slight difference, but it's not enough to make an impact and keep people's attention. Yeah. So that was something I had to work on.
Yeah, I love that. And I did too. I mean, I didn't naturally go up in my tone, go down in my tone. I didn't intentionally project more volume and then take my volume back. All those things, I didn't know you could do that on purpose, and it elicits emotions in other people when you do it. So I had to learn this. Like, this wasn't, I mean, some of the things I did, I guess I did normally because I'm just so animated. And so my voice would do that. But to really know how to do it on purpose was important. Yes. So I love that. Well, I just love what you're doing. So I have one of my favorite questions is I always ask, because, we're talking about women, and sometimes when we face fears that are, the next big step, the next level, we feel a wavering in our confidence, right? And so one of the things that I always do is I borrow the confidence from my future self. I take the woman who has a $40 million company, who has a New York Times bestselling book. She's already on massive stages. She's making tons of impact in the world. And I bring her in front of me and I kind of sit her down and I ask, what should I be doing next? Like, what is your feedback? Where should I be going? How should I be handling this? So if your future self was to come and give you advice, what do you think she would say to you today?
Wow, that's a great question. So I have to get in future self mode and see what that looks like. Future self. So if I'm already, my future self to me now today would probably be, you waited too long to start. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, don't keep waiting. Keep going. You're going to get there. And ironically for me, this is something I don't know that I've thought about it in terms of future self, but it's been something that thing that I'm not crazy about doing. I can write. I'm just not crazy about it. And yet I think sometimes that might be the key is so future self would be to write more, start writing, keep writing, finish the remake of the book, finish the next book, keep going. And it's, I can see it down the road, and it's kind of really what we've talked about. It's keep practicing. It's that whole concept of just keep swimming, right? Right. It's like, I think we get to a place sometimes, and you see memes on this, but that you've done all the work and you're like, what else? And you get to that point where you're just not sure. And every time you want to up level, like you could have a great talk, and I have a great networking talk that converts and I do well with it. And my name is getting out there. It's like, okay, now I got to go to that next level. And it's not that it's not enough, it's the next level. And so that future self telling me the next level works. I like right. That. There's 5 more levels beyond that. Keep going. It works. Yeah. It's working. And, and I think too, that's something I wish someone had told me 15 years ago.
Right. Well, there's not a lot of people that, we're doing what we're doing now and the way that we're doing things now too, it's so totally changed. It was, speaking was road dogs out there hitting, like never home, on the road, speaking all the time, making money doing it, but not selling into anything because they really didn't have products or services. Like it was just to speak. And now with the internet and being able to, do a Facebook Live, be able to do live videos, you could be speaking to thousands of people every day in the comfort in your own pajamas. Like maybe not even
we're dressed though, just so you know.
Yes. I mean, I do have pants on, I promise, today. But I'm not telling you that every day I have pants on.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I think somehow that future self voice is in our head all the time. Years ago, I was working with a coach and I kind of knew that the direction I was going was not really where I wanted to be. And she, on the phone, she said to me, she's like, you should be a charisma coach. I'm like, a charisma coach? I'm like, I don't know how to teach charisma. Like, that's not my thing. And then I looked up charisma coach, and the person who had it at the time, I don't know who has it now, so I'm not judging anybody. But at the time was the least charismatic website I'd ever seen. It looked like a lawyer or a banker. Sorry, lawyers and bankers, but let's face it, your websites don't look overly charismatic. Right. And then she says, and we started talking about all my experience with speaking. I had to present to the dean of the College of Communications to graduate with part of my communications degree. And I said, I don't want to coach speakers and coach on speaking. I want to speak. And that was 15 years ago, give or take. And I took this, like where we started, this organic path of doing this work that I loved, using speaking, something that I knew I could do, to grow that, got invited to this amazing opportunity. And through that, it has circled back around. And I still do my other work. I don't hang a shingle specifically for this one thing. And yet, because I've done so much of it, that's the thing that has developed. So whether I was avoiding it back then or not, maybe I was. But I feel like that's that place of the higher level, the higher consciousness, whatever you call it, knowing that you're supposed to be someplace else. It just took me longer to get there. And so now it's like, and it frames how I see things now. Because now I'm like, don't take the safe route. Don't take the unsure. Go for it. You got nothing to lose, right? You're just going to be where you are right now. And, just do it. And I think back then and having young kids at the time, like, I was maybe trying to control too much and have things a certain way. And so I think and I love that part of me has guided me. And I trust that it will continue to guide me in the next 15, 20 years.
Awesome. So how can people get more information about you? How can they find more, to go deeper with you? Tell us how.
So the best way to get to know me better is through events like this. And I do them in my live Facebook group. So my company name right now is Bright Outside the Box. And my Facebook group page is groups/Bright Outside the Box. And I do a lot of live trainings and videos, or just little fun stuff in there. Last week or so, I think I was posting shoes to wear on stage. It was a little bit of everything. Like, it's the whole thing. It's what to wear, what to do. And it's also some of this productivity stuff too, because to speak is not enough. There's a follow-up system involved. There's work involved. There's phone calls involved. There's what do you say? There's how do you find the right person? So it's not just the speaking is for performance, my part of it. It's not necessarily everybody's part, but there's this productivity piece of how do you put it all together and make it work? And I do a lot of that. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Kricket Cody Harrison on LinkedIn. It's a great way to find me.
All right. Awesome. I'm going to put all of that in the show notes and on Facebook so people can follow you from there. I love that. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of your nuggets, and it was so much fun to just sit here and chat and get to know each other a bit better and love what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Erin. This was great. Thanks for going live. I have to say, this is since we're in a different format, like I forget that we're live. So it's actually really cool because you are, but then it's like we talked, it's like we're sitting back in the green room or something, right?
Yeah.
And just having this chat, and so it's been really fun. I really enjoy it, and I love hearing about all the stuff you're up to as well. And so look forward to seeing both of us out there and in those forums and with what we're doing to change things.
Yes, definitely changing the planet. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the Transformational Speakers Podcast, and we will see you on stage.
Bye, everybody.